world. Thank you so much for joining in this session today. For this 1 hour that we are trying to create maximum value for you so that you can understand things which can make you pass the upcoming exam attempt. By now, you must have gone through the syllabus, covered the study text to a great extent. I hope have done some practice also. So over here we are with the examiner's report and the ACCA support material available to tell you that in these last few weeks, what are you going to focus on to make your pass mark an even higher one? So, with a very positive intent, we are going to start the session. So, today I'm here in the FR InFocus webinar. We're going to, as I mentioned, talk about examiner's report. This is a little bit about me so that you know me. I'm Aleena Kareem. I have myself done ACCA. I'm a fellow member of ACCA, so I have walked the talk. I gave the same exams. I have been teaching the same exams for over a decade now. So I've seen the qualification transition, and hopefully whatever experience I have with respect to content writing, marking the scripts of my students, all of that I'm going to combine and create all the tips that I can pass on to you in this 1 hour. And in the end, we'll have a Q&A also, which is in which you can ask your customized questions also. So I'm an ACCA, FR, and SBR expert tutor at ACCA. I have trained at international level in person as well as online for the tutors also and for the students. Currently, I'm teaching at SCANS eCampus, and as I said, the teaching experience is ever growing. Pleasure to be here with all of you today. So, starting off with the agenda that we have in mind, we are going to talk about the key insights from the latest examiner report. So, the latest examiner report is for the September-December 2024 exam attempt. As you know, ACCA releases some questions that were tested in these exam attempts, and then based on those, the examiner's report is also covered. We're going to talk about what are the benefits that you can get from the study hub, how it can help you in effective exam strategies, and in the end we have live Q&A. Exam strategies, to be honest, we're going to discuss, the whole session is about exam strategies. So from content to technique, all is that what we are going to cover. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the examiner's report. Now, very commonly, we listen to the students saying that, okay, limited questions are available on the ACCA. And especially a lot of students, when we ask them that, do you have access to the OTs and OT cases that are tested in the exam? They would very simply say no, because on the practice platform, only long form questions or only CRs are available. So OTs and OT cases, there is no way to know other than just the feedback that we are getting from senior students, etc. That is wrong. Why? Because in every examiner report that is released, and there are quite a few, there's a very big list on the ACCA website. In every exam attempt, the examiner releases the questions which are right now shared over here also, in which in section A, 4 OTs are disclosed. These are actual exam questions. So this is just one report. Multiply this with maybe 20 reports which are available online, and you have a very big bank of questions available. Then you have OT cases. In every exam attempt, one complete OT case is disclosed over here in the examiner's report. And then you have 2 CRs which are available. So these are not just very important ones. Normally, these are the ones in which the students have faced a challenge. And the examiner tells you in detail as to what were the most common errors. Trust me, if you just focus on these, and you will be surprised. Once you read the examiner reports after this session, A, they are a must read for your exam preparation. B, once you read them, you will realize the pattern also, that there are so many mistakes which the examiner has been telling over and over and over, that this is the error that the students are making. And you need to correct that so that you don't make the same mistakes again. And a little tip, why are most common errors disclosed? Because most probable chances that they're going to be tested again in the exam. And this is something that I'm saying from my experience and the feedback of students, that very commonly such questions come up again in the exam with slightly different figures, a slightly different scenario. So if you prepare these properly, this is going to help you a lot in not just covering the breadth of the syllabus, but also identifying what are the areas which the examiner feels are some things that the students might struggle with, and the examiner may test them again in the upcoming exam attempts. Before I go into the examiner's report details, the first thing that I want you to say out loud wherever you are sitting is, the examiner wants you to pass. The FR examiner wants you to pass. Not just the examiner. The whole ACCA team wants you to pass. So the education team, the content team, they all want you to pass. Which is why, other than the actual exam question paper, they tell you everything in advance. You have the syllabus in advance. You have the exact content and the learning outcomes there that are going to be tested in advance. They tell you the paper pattern in advance. They tell you how the functionalities of exam are going to be in advance. They give you examiner articles. They give you most common errors. They give you now with the study hub, they have given you the complete study text in advance. They've given you past practice questions in advance, because you see in reporting, at times the reporting requirements change over time, new standards come in, but in the study hub all the questions are updated as per the latest exam attempt. So you have the practice questions there. Oh, there is a bulk of practice questions over there. So trust me, if you just make use of all of these, nothing, and mark my word on this, you can hold me accountable on this, nothing is going to be a surprise in your exam if you just make sure you are covering all of this content properly. Nothing is going to be a surprise, because the examiner has a particular area in which the syllabus is going to be made, a particular way in which questions are going to be tested. So have that trust, prepare properly, and you will be good. So now, quickly coming back to the examiner's report, because we are going to keep it very focused on examiner report, because this identifies common issues. So we are going to go through them, and as we go through, naturally we'll be covering all the issues that this potential student might face. So as I said, you have 4 objective test questions, 1 complete OT case question, so 5 OTs related to that, and 2 CRs available in the examiner's report. This is the pattern that is there. Now, in the examiner's report, what are the particular things that are tested? So the key insights that we got, and this is not just from this particular examiner report. I read examiner report every time around it comes, and these are all the things that the examiner tries to cover. So what are the challenges that the students will face? What are the actual exam questions that were there? How the knowledge is going to be applied? What are the common errors? And the examiner has been repeatedly saying this. I will say this repeatedly also. Read the question carefully, read the requirement carefully, because your answer has to be for the question that has been asked, not what you understood or what you remembered from something that you've done before. So you have to answer the question that has been asked and then manage the time properly. So these are the areas that the examiner has repeatedly focused on, that you should focus in your preparation. And whatever issues you see in the examiner report, you prepare for them. Now, a very major area, because of the time, I've tried to balance things out. So over here, I'm going to cover some CR related points. And then when I open the examiner's report, then I'm going to show you some OTs and OT cases also. So a very common area that the students at times struggle with are the key insights related to examiner's report. And over here, the examiner has identified in section C, in analysis and interpretation, the examiner has repeatedly said, and has said in this particular attempt also, that as usual, this was the worst attempted area of the exam, the weakest attempted area. Why? Because these are the tips that have been given by the examiner that you need to focus on while you are solving an analysis and interpretation question. While we are studying it, we call it a ratio analysis question also. So the section C, analysis and interpretation of financial statements, it talks about addressing the requirement. So very importantly, you need to see what has been asked. If the examiner is asking you for limitations, just focus on that. There are some questions in which the examiner says comment on the financial position and performance of the organization. So you have to answer for both. In some questions, the examiner simply says in some requirements, comment on the financial performance of the organization. So you just have to focus on the ratios which come under the performance umbrella. Okay, so address the requirement that is there. Very importantly, use the information in the scenario. Now, this is once again, I picked this up and I'm spending time on this because the examiner over time has said that this is an area in which the students struggle a lot. And most common issue is that they would write generic answers. Now, a lot of students say, oh, we know what a ratio means, but we were unable to identify how we are going to explain it in the exam. So we just wrote that the ratio increased from this to this, the ratio increased from this to this, it decreased. That's not what the examiner is looking for. Please see, now you are at applied skills level. So it's like you are moving above in the ranks in the workplace. So as you move above in the ranks in your workplace, you need to show your competence more. And over here also, they say that use the information in the scenario. So every time around, when you have to explain a ratio, you have to link it to the scenario. Whether the business is increasing, normally the first two lines of your question, they tell you about the industry. So whether it's a multinational company, it's one company which is looking to expand its operations, it wants to diversify geographically or product wise. So read that introduction. Then come to the figures and then to the points that are given by the examiner. So over here, please remember your question is going to be your best friend. Each and every word, remember this point, please. In your ACCA exam, there is not even a single extra word written which is without any use. That's not how the ACCA body makes its exams. The questions made are relevant to your answer. The information given in the question is relevant to your answer. So make sure while you're writing your answer, you touch upon each and every point that is written in your question. Because if you touch upon those points, it means that you are covering them for your answer also. So no point which is written, if you are thinking at any point, oh, there is a point written in the question, and I'm unable to understand how it is going to impact the answer, it means you're missing out on something. That point is going to affect some information or the other. Like there was a very interesting question in one of the past exams where it was a disposal of subsidiary. But interestingly, in the last line, they said that, the company had rented out its property to its subsidiary company. And as a part of their arrangement, they were offering them at lesser rent. Now, when the situation will change, they're going to rent it out to a third party. So although this one line was written, and you may think, oh, it's a part of the disposal arrangement. No, you had to apply IS 40 over there. You had to tell that it's an investment property. Now we are going to rent it out at a higher rent. So that's going to increase our income, that's going to increase our profit, and likewise, the ratios are going to be impacted. So link every information in your question with your answer. Write complete answer. Guys, there is no negative marking in your exam. So even when you don't know the right answer, write something down so that you are able to identify and you are able to properly answer it, and do not miss out on any mark. Because if you are missing out on any mark, like in the interpretation question, the examiner said a lot of students left the interpretation part, which was like 10 to 12 marks. So if you are leaving 10 to 12 marks, then you are not getting graded out of 100. You're getting graded out of maybe 90 or 88 or 85. That's not fair. So that becomes difficult. So please make sure you attempt it, make it relevant. Very importantly, show the workings of all the calculations, because if a ratio is wrong, then the examiner will immediately see the working. If in the working at least one figure is correct, you will get marks for it. Once again, my same mantra. The examiner wants you to pass. The marker also wants you to pass. They want to give you credit for every possible thing. So make their life easy by writing the calculations. If there are any pre-formatted response spaces available, make use of that. Why? Because you see, the examiner is saving typing time for you. If you delete that by any chance, A, it's not going to come back. B, you'll have to type everything up yourself. So when your exams are made, they are not just evaluated with respect to marking. The examiners make sure that they have given you ample time also so that you can solve your exam. So that time management is done considering the pre-formatted workspace. Read the scenario and requirements carefully, make all the adjustments. So all of these tips that are there. With respect to final accounts and consolidation, please structure your answer properly, format the financial statements properly, focus on easy marks. This is a very major area. When you start a question, some marks are just easy marks. What are easy marks? You pick up a figure from the question, you place it in the answer. That's it. So if you're making, let's suppose, a consolidated statement of profit or loss, you have to pick up the sales of parent company, sales of subsidiary company, add them, apportion them. So just picking up those parent and subsidiary figures, they'll get you marks. So pick up the easy marks first, even if it is a zero point 0.5 mark, each mark counts. So pick up the easy marks first, then use the figures from the question. Remember, if you have a trial balance given, every figure in your trial balance is going to be used in your answer at least once, either in the main format or in the workings. And the points that are given at the end of trial balance, the adjustments, they are always going to have two impacts. A debit impact, minimum two. There can be three also, but there's going to be a debit impact and there is going to be a credit impact. So keep this in mind while solving. I remember when I was giving my FR exam, it used to be a manual paper back then. So I marked it. So I said that, okay, trial balance, every figure I have used once. And for the adjustments, I need to put 2 marks because a debit adjustment and a credit adjustment needs to be done. Now you have this functionality in your computer-based exam also. You can color, you can cross through. So use that to identify all these figures so that you don't miss out any figure in the end. Show calculations and entries of the adjustments. Sequence of adjustments normally is not a problem unless and until there is one working which is dependent on the other. Maybe at times there is a link between revaluation and deferred tax, but in most of the cases, your adjustments are independent of each other. So you can solve them in whatever sequence you are more comfortable with. Remember, the marker wants you to pass as well. So the marker is going to look at each and every figure that you quote in your exam. Okay? Now, just a few things about final accounts. So show the workings, link the workings. Whenever you are showing your workings, please create a link. In the Excel workspace, it's much easier if you link the cells directly. That makes your life much, much easier. So link the cells. Otherwise, if that's not possible, give the working note and mention it. Own figure rule. This is a rule which is once again a lifesaver. So for example, you had to calculate consolidated, gross profit. There was an error in the revenue figure. Cost of sales was correct. If the revenue is wrong, the gross profit is going to be wrong. The operating profit is going to be wrong. Now the examiner is going to penalize you only once for a mistake. So if the revenue figure is wrong, you're going to be penalized for that only. Later on, wherever that figure has been used, the examiner, the marker is going to assume that that figure was correct. So that is something that you need to link at every point and make sure that you do not miss out on any working thinking, oh, maybe I haven't done the first one correct. Pro tip, even if you are unable to calculate a figure, give an assumption, put in a figure which is closest to what you can get from the question and solve the remaining answer. Because as per the own figure rule, the marker is obligated to consider that to penalize you only once for the wrong figure, and going forward, all the answers are going to be based on that particular figure. And once again, very importantly, consider time apportionment. Always, when you start your question, immediately highlight the reporting date, because we're in financial reporting. The reporting date is extremely important. So at every point, highlight the reporting date so that all your working can be centered around that particular date. Once again, for the analysis, we discussed, provide the analysis. You don't get any marks for copy pasting from the scenario. Please don't waste any marks on it. No generic comments. financial position performance needs to be given. And once again, find for the final conclusion, give a heading of conclusion. Remember, there is one separate mark in every interpretation question for conclusion. So put in that and manage your time overall accordingly. I've written manage the time everywhere because this is something that the students struggle with. um, Ideally you have more time, but what I recommend to my students is that make a target that you do your section A in approximately 45 minutes, section B approximately in 45 minutes, so that for the last 20 marks, you for the last 40 marks actually, sorry, in the section C, you have 1.5 hours available, because you see OTs and OT cases in that the questions are already written. You just have to write down the answer, or just click the answer. In these CR questions, you have to type a lot. So reading the question is long, typing it is wrong. So it normally takes more time. So try to time yourself within 45 minutes for the first two sections and save the last 1.5 hours for the CR question. Now, we're going to take a look at some of the technical examples from the examiner report, and also I'm going to show you how these things link to study hub so that when you are preparing yourself, you can see that. Let me share my screen for this. Okay, so here we are with the examiner report for this particular exam attempt. Now in here, you can see that the same part, some OTs are available, OT cases are available. Now I want to discuss a few OTs with you so that I can highlight what are the areas of struggle. So over here, if you see, there is a first question which is related to, if you read the requirement, what amounts will be included in the financial statements for the year ended? I've highlighted the reporting date for you because once again, everything is going to revolve around this particular reporting date. In respect of the above transactions, 30th April 2026. This was related to buying a new equipment and then there was a grant received. Now, what was the requirement of the question? The question is saying what amounts will be included in the financial statements. Now, this is interesting because they are simply saying what will be included in financial statements. They are not saying what will be the depreciation charge, what will be the amortization of government grant. No, they're simply saying state the figures in financial statements. And if you see the requirements, they have asked you what will be charged to profit or loss. No differentiation, nothing highlighted what actually goes in P&L. Simply, they've left it to your judgment what will go in P&L. Of late, this is how most of the questions are tested. So the examiner does not say what is going to be the charge for depreciation in P&L, how much is going to be the amortization of grant. Rather, they show you like this, that profit or loss, and over here they've said current liabilities. Now I've shown the working for you. In this particular question, the twist was that in P&L, because there was an asset which has been purchased and then there is grant. So depreciation needed to be charged and then amortization of grant also needed to be done. One was a debit figure, the other was a credit figure. Now, a very common error in this is that we get so focused on depreciation that we may miss out on the grant. Now, over here, we had to take up the figure of the asset, which was 500,000, 20% depreciation. It was mentioned in the question that it is depreciated at 20% on straight line basis. Our IS 20 rule says that grant income will also be grant will also be amortized at the same rate, which is 20%. We calculate the depreciation, we calculate the grant income, and then we get our answer, which is 70,000 for P&L. Similarly, for current liabilities. Now, this is also something very interesting because with respect to grant and lease, the examiner has repeatedly said that a lot of students struggle with identifying current liabilities and non-current liabilities. So over here, to identify the current liabilities, you take the total grant income. Out of that, some has been released already. So 30,000 has already been released. We just calculated this above. 30,000 is going to be further released in the next year because 20% straight line method is being used, and the remaining is non-current liability. The examiner could have asked you anything. So current liability over here was to be highlighted. The examiner then pointed out that this is from the syllabus learning outcome B11A. Now, this is something that I was telling you before, that the examiner's hands are also tied. The person who's making the exam, their hands are also tied. They cannot give you anything outside of your syllabus. So, every question that you see in the syllabus, in this examiner report, it is linked to a learning outcome written in your syllabus. So, what does this mean? If you make sure that you have covered every point written in your syllabus, there is nothing which should be a surprise for you in your final exam. So you will see it over here. The relevant standard is also written. This was the calculation given. And once again, what went wrong was, the most common error was to select only depreciation for the P&L. Most common error. This happens in terms of grant also. This happens at times in terms of lease liability as well, because there is depreciation and then there is lease related expenses. Then you may have any other kind of, let's suppose intangible assets. In that case also, at times there is research and development expenditure, and then there is separate depreciation also. So this is a very big trick. Please keep this in mind, a very common trick, which is why I spent so much time on this question, that the examiner very politely says, what is going to be the charge in P&L? What you have to think is, what are all the possible things that can impact the statement of profit or loss? Okay? Mention them and not just the depreciation. Then over here there was another question. This was related to consolidation. I'm not reading the complete question. You have access to this examiner report. Please attempt this. So I will highlight the important areas over here. So this question talked about the acquisition of a subsidiary, and then they said that later on the acquisition was done on 1st March 20x4, and later on 1st June 20x6, they disposed of the entire shareholding. Now, this is a good thing in the FR syllabus. Always, in terms of subsidiary, the disposal is going to be of entire shareholding. So that's not something that you need to worry about. In SPR, there is partial disposal. In FR, there is complete disposal. But the twist is that when you're talking about complete disposal also, in that case, you have to identify what the question is asking. Is the question asking you to calculate the profit or loss on disposal in individual financial statements of the parent company, or from the group point of view? So over here in this question, it said that what is the profit on disposal to be used in the preparation of the consolidated financial statements. Now, when the examiner used the word consolidated financial statements, in this case, what we needed to do was, we needed to calculate the balance which was there in the group, from the group point of view. And so now another way to ask the same question would have been, what is the group profit or loss on disposal? So this is something that you had to be careful about. Yeah?
Aleena, sorry to disturb you in between. Actually, we are getting messages like screen is frozen for the students. If you can please reload your page and share again.
Okay. Okay, sure.
Because there is a screen. Yes, please.
So I've stopped sharing and then I can reshare.
Yes, please.
And the examiner. Just a quick confirmation, is this now visible? I am on the question 2.
Yes, it is visible now.
Good, done, great. Thank you. So over here, the profit on disposal with respect to group was to be accounted for. Now, the twist over here once again was that the group gain or loss on disposal had to be calculated. So the correct way for it is that you have to take the consideration received. You have to include the NCI portion also, because there is full goodwill method. Goodwill, net assets, share capital, and retained earnings all needed to be shown, and then the group gain on disposal was to be calculated. The most common error that the examiner highlighted was that a lot of students ignored NCI and goodwill. So you need to be clear in your concepts, otherwise, the question was straightforward. And that is where I would like to show you the ACCA study hub also. I'm going to open the study hub. If there is any issue in the visuals, please do let me know. I hope you can now see the study hub screen. So now, over here in the chapter 24, there is consolidated statement of profit or loss, and then there is a tab named disposal. Okay. So in this disposal, remember what I highlighted? The question was about what? Gain or loss on disposal in consolidated financial statements. So that's this 24.5.3. When I click on it, we come to the consolidated financial statements and the disposal part. Now, the exact same thing which has been asked in the question, I'll take this down because they started off with simpler questions. And over here, you can see that with NCI also measured, they have calculated for you this is the profit on disposal. So a similar kind of thing where a subsidiary was acquired a few years ago, then it was disposed of, and now you have to calculate how the profit is going to appear in the consolidated financial statements. So you see, this is the group working. Proceeds on disposal, the carrying amount, net assets have been calculated, goodwill has been calculated, NCI has been calculated, and there is profit on disposal. So you see something which is exactly there in the study hub. It has been tested in the exam. So what does this show? That if you're solving these questions properly in your study hub, you can comprehensively cover the concepts which are actually tested in the exam. Okay? So this is something that I wanted to show you related to Mullard Company. Now let's move to a few other questions. This was also an interesting one. This was related to intangible assets, and they had given you the capitalized development costs were given, and then number of units of sale were given. And the examiner said, once again, as I said very cutely, they said, what is the charge to statement of profit or loss? Now, whenever they're talking about charge to statement of profit or loss, this is something in which you have to be careful that is it just the amortization that I have to calculate, or is there any research or any such thing also that is going to come into question? Now, over here, the twist in the question was, once again, the syllabus learning outcome exactly has been highlighted. The twist was that you had to calculate the amortization based on number of units sold. Now, the most common error was that either the students did not amortize and said, oh, there's going to be zero charge because this is a capitalized expenditure, or simply amortize the asset over straight line. Now, this is once again something you have to cover conceptually. I will again take you back to the study hub where in chapter number 5, which is, chapter 11, I related to intangible assets, I studied. In this, we have a tab which talks about the useful life. And in this, we had finite useful life. And in this particular point, it clearly tells you that you have to depreciate an intangible asset on a systematic basis over the best estimate of its useful life. And in this case, the best estimate, once again, needs to be identified. And it says that this point, basically this particular question, this tested this point. It said amortization method should reflect the pattern in which the asset's economic benefits are expected to be consumed. If that pattern cannot be determined reliably, the straight line method is to be used. So basically, this question highlighted in the examiner report tested all of this point. So over here, they gave the pattern in which economic benefits were going to be received, and they tested whether the students know that if the economic benefits are available, then are you going to use that, or you're going to go for straight line method. So once again, I'm linking it to over here, these points over here, so that you can get a hang of how the study hub looks like and you can make maximum use of it. Then the next question also, I'll quickly go through it so that we can move to OT cases also and have time for our Q&A at the end as well. So in this question number 4, it was very interesting. Bonus issue was there. Whenever there is bonus issue, you have to go back and you have to restate the previous year balance also. You can make a reference of the study hub in chapter number 20, which was related to IS 33. Let me just quickly show you. Chapter 20 related to IS 33. In here, you have the basic rule in which the shares were issued where no consideration is received. So bonus issue was comprehensively covered, identifying that when the bonus issue is made, you need to not only calculate its impact in the current year, you have to restate the previous year balance also. And the examiner said that the most common error was that the students forgot that the previous year also needs to be restated. So all of this is highlighted. Now, identify these areas, look for such things in the previous exam reports also, and highlight where you can cover this. And as you can see, all the text is available in the syllabus area. Everything is linked to the syllabus areas, and then everything is linked to your study hub as well. Make use of that. Now the material is with you. Now it's on you how you are going to use that. Then coming to the OT case questions, once again, very importantly, identify the year end, identify what the scenario is, and this is going to be linked to multiple questions. Some questions are straightforward, like this first question. This was just a straightforward application of the theory of standard, no link to the question. So deferred tax takes accounts of temporary differences. This was true. The examiner said mostly students marked this correctly, but discounting of deferred tax, ICE 12 clearly says this does not happen. This was false. Revaluation will have no impact. This was false. Again, something which is a straightforward testing of knowledge. Linkage to the syllabus is available for each and every question of the OT case also. So this is something that I wanted for you to see yourself, that go through these questions, try to attempt them, link them to your syllabus, link them to your answers, to the study hub, so that you have the confidence that if I've covered study hub correctly, then once again, no surprises for you within the exam. Now, this was a very small point, but I wanted to highlight this. This question clearly stated, round off your answer to nearest thousands. After saying that, the examiner also mentioned over here 000. And unfortunately, there were students. The correct answer was 42,000, so you had to write 42. A lot of students, the examiner said, they still wrote the answer 42,000. Now, yes, some did not work it out properly. They did not mark the deferred tax charge in revaluation. That's a requirement, because once again, the examiner simply said, what is the deferred tax after deferred tax effect? What is the revalued value? So if you just write evaluation, that's not enough. But this is the sad part, that a lot of students wrote 42,000. That is wrong. 42 was the answer. So this is such a small point, but you need to keep in mind, because at times this is not something which the candidates don't understand, but this is something that at times they miss out when they are doing when they're in the time pressure. So that is something which creates an issue. Now, all of these questions, I will leave it on you to cover these. I've covered in the very beginning in my slides the main things related to section C, but I wanted to go through it with you also. This is what the exam, as in the previous exam sessions, most candidates failed to score high marks on this question. And for this reason, once again, it was poor exam technique. And personally, I feel this is the easiest point where you can take marks, because interpretation is subjective. There are no absolute right or wrong answers. You have a margin of explaining things. So use the scenario for it. Over here also, once again, learning outcomes have been linked. Everything has been stated. I want to take you to these few parts. Common errors. The students took wrong share price while calculating the consideration. Now, this comes in your OTs, OT cases, CRs. Please make sure you don't make such errors. Pick up the correct figures so that you are able to get maximum marks. In deferred consideration, discounting was not done. Once again, there are like I think over 1,000 questions on this, so this should not be an error that you make. Now, then many students, this is something of a time pressure. So manage your time properly, because they said if this was so odd, because a lot of students, rather than saying that the parent company has 80% shareholding, so we should take 80% of total shares. For NCI, we should take 20% of total shares. They took the total figures. So that is something which needs to be managed. Then calculation. Now, this was very interesting. The examiner clearly said calculate the gearing using debt divided by equity figure. Later on, the examiner said that many students calculated as debt divided by debt plus equity. Why? What the examiner says is right. Do what the examiner is asking you to do. Okay? And show full workings. Once again, they are completely emphasizing on that. A lot of students did not present any workings, so this is something which needed to be highlighted. Now, these are also a few points. You can see them once again in the recording also that I have highlighted with respect to these particular questions. Now, once again, coming to the explanation part, a good question is going to provide a rationale for changing in ratios. So just saying that the ratios have increased or decreased is not appropriate. In this particular question, the sales were being now done at a discounted price. So you had to create that link that because of this, the sales figure is going to be down, but the cost of sales figure is not going to be down. So that is a challenge. Once again, I've explained the own figure rule to you. These are the maximum variety of questions that can be tested in your exam. Prepare for all of these, and once again, no surprises in the final exam. Use the pre-formatted workspace. We've already covered that. And the last question over here was related to a final accounts question. In this also, there were small tips. These are very much like the OT cases that you do, except over here you have to show all the possible workings related to them. Once again, this is something that I wanted to highlight, something very easy. Property depreciation was not correctly calculated. Something which was a capitalized development expenditure or the capitalized costs, they needed to be adjusted, and this was something which was not done. This was something very interesting, and after that I'll move back to the presentation and start taking questions. That in this question, the examiner had given a trial balance, but there was a point in the adjustments that was not given in the trial balance. It was related to lease. So a lot of students missed that out. They just used the trial balance line items and missed out the lease part. So all figures, and normally at least one figure is not present in the trial balance. Be very careful in your adjustments to identify any such thing and then do the remaining calculations accordingly. Coming to the study hub, I've shown you how the chapters look like. This comprehensively covers the questions. You have short questions which are related to quizzes. Even in chapters also, something that I would like to show you, I can start off with conceptual framework. So you have everything available. You have the topic explainer videos also available. This one is mine, so I'll show you that. So you have to, so this is something in which not just the theory part is available, even the explanation and any related video content is also available. Also, you have in the same conceptual framework, in the end, you will see there is a link to technical articles also. So this is like a one-stop shop for your preparation. And then in every point that you are dealing with, you can rate your confidence, you can bookmark it to come back to it for later part. You have quizzes also. In all of these quizzes, you have objective test questions. So you can see there are 27 quizzes, 5 questions each. Just imagine the question bank, and this is not enough. Then you come to the practice part also. So you have OTs, OT case questions, all of these, And in the revisions, you have the long form questions also. So these are the final accounts questions. Then you have consolidation questions. In interpretation also, you have same kind of questions. So like the question that came up in the last exam attempt that was talking about a disposal, a similar question is available in the study hub also. And these are all updated as per the latest exam attempt. So please make use of all of this so that you are able to gain the maximum out of the resources that are available for you. Now I'm back. We have covered all of this study hub, the exam strategies also. I have comprehensively covered them for you. Please go through these slides also so that you can have a better understanding. But last but not the least, the most important part for me is this last line: practice, practice, and practice. And practice in the exam environment. Use the practice platform, use the study hub so that you can have maximum familiarity with the areas that you are dealing with. So this is all from my side. I hope you have found the session useful and the resources and the areas that are important. And now I will move towards the question and answer session that is available for us. Please feel free to drop any questions that you have. I'll try to cover the maximum ones, starting off with the latest ones, starting from the first question that I have received. So let me start. The first question by Raj Shah was: should last three previous papers are enough to pass the examination? No. I'll be very straightforward. Not just the last three exam attempts. You have to do more comprehensive practice. We've discussed the resources that are available. You have Study Hub. You have more past exam papers available. But yes, if you solve the Study Hub questions, you solve the past exam papers that are available on ACCA website, and you solve the questions that are there in the examiner report. These three, and you're good to go. Okay. Then another question is there any guidance on how to answer the different question descriptions like discuss, critically discuss, explain? I don't understand what each of these means. Heather, I will make things easier for you. At the FR level, the main difference comes in the calculate and discuss or explain. So when you are talking about the calculate part, it means it only focuses on the numerical portions. Explain normally means just explain the relevant part of the standard. Okay? And discuss or critically discuss means there are two situations, and you or evaluate also. When you have evaluate or discuss, you have to tell the pros and cons of a particular item. So normally there are two sides to the thing. So when you get verbs like explain, discuss, it definitely means that a very major portion of your answer is now going to be a theory based answer. Okay, so focus on that and try to quote the relevant part of the standard, as well as if there are two situations, try to give the pros and cons of both. Okay, just focus on that. At the FR level, it doesn't get more complicated than this. Okay, then there was another question: the marks of working notes are given if we hold some correctly, but we can't be able to calculate the answer. That's fine. Raja has asked this question that if our workings are fine, but the final answer isn't, or we are unable to calculate the final answer, that's fine. You get marks for steps. Each and every step. It's the responsibility of the markers to mark each and every step individually. So even if you don't provide the total, there not going to be any deduction of marks or extra marks for that. Just make sure all the steps are covered, and every step related to that, all information that is given in the scenario, you have used that. Okay? Then, can we use short form in workings like depreciation will write as depre or property? See, he's asked about the abbreviations that are to be used. Some abbreviations are more commonly used worldwide, like property, plant, and equipment is PPE. But see, for depreciation, just writing dep or depre or depres, that varies. So that this is no standardization. The tip that I would give you in this regard is, see, in your section A and B, you don't need to write long answers. So this struggle is only with the part C of the exam. This is a philosophy that I believe in, that whenever you are facing a problem, break it down into chunks. So this problem is not related to section A and B. This is just related to section C. And in section C, you have just two questions. So when you are solving a question, at least once in the beginning, write the full form and in the bracket write the abbreviation. Then you can use the abbreviation later on. But if you just directly write the depreciation, the abbreviations, then the markers come across thousands of scripts. Everyone can come up with different abbreviations, so that's not appreciated. So at least write once the full form and the abbreviation in the bracket, and then you can use it later on, or just copy paste that. Okay. Then let me just read the next question. Ahmed has asked how much ISS cover in final accounts. A lot of standards, multiple standards can come up. We have seen 5 to 6 standards also coming up in your final accounts. But the very easy thing, once again, is that on your ACCA website, in the examinable documents, there is a list of documents which are going to be tested in your exam. So in that, clearly all the standards are written. So in your final accounts, you are going to get a multi-standard question. It's always a small part. That makes it easy, actually, that the examiner can not go beyond a certain level of difficulty. So there are going to be 4 to 5 mark parts related to different standards, and 5 to 6 different standards may be tested. Then Rudapriya has asked analysis and interpretation. Say, for instance, I calculate the ratios wrong, but I go ahead to write the interpretation connecting it to the case. How will I be marked? Rudapriya, first of all, if your ratios are wrong, the first step is the marker is going to see the breakup of your working. So if the denominator is wrong and the numerator is correct, you are still going to get half mark for the ratio calculation. Okay. Let's suppose it was completely wrong. Even then, from now onwards, it is the responsibility of the marker to assume that the ratio you have calculated is correct. So as long as you write the interpretation in the context of the scenario as per the figure that you have calculated, if that linkage makes sense and is conceptually correct, you will get marks for it. Okay, this is precisely what the own figure rule is. Hamad has asked a question. It was a good session. Thank you so much, Hamad. One thing that you mentioned was that we will get marked for every working, but what about final accounts? What if in the statement of financial position our asset sides and equity sides don't match due to some error in the working? How much marks would we get? I think, Hamad, I just answered this once I started taking the questions, that no, for the totals, there are no marks. There are no separate marks for totals. So even if the totals don't match, don't worry about it. Don't even waste 1 second trying to do something extra to balance them, because you never know which figure is correct, which isn't. So just focus on the individual workings. That is what is going to get you marks. Tips for these last weeks before the exams, Christina, my final tips would be focus on practice. This is the time now where you've done the study, you've read the standards, maybe multiple times you've read those standards, you've gone through them, but this is the time for practice. Make a target of number of questions that you are going to practice in the exam environment. By exam environment, I mean you're going to do it online, and you're going to make it time bound as well. So if you do that, and the materials that I have told you, past exam papers, study hub, okay, the practice material in the study hub, and the questions in the examiner report. This is the best formula. You'll remember me when you pass the exam. So this is what I would recommend. Focus on practice of these areas, because through practice you are going to revise all the concepts, and through this, it's even bigger help that you identify the application. Like something else I used to do as a student was that if I answered something wrong, I used to mark what I did wrong in that question. And because of that, next time around when I opened the question, I knew exactly the error I had made. And while revising one day before the exam also, I used to take out what were the areas that I struggled with. So I don't need to revise the whole standard. Maybe if, let's suppose, I was just struggling with a calculation on gain on disposal of subsidiary. So rather than doing it whole, I would focus on that particular area and cover the questions accordingly. So practice, practice, practice. That is my recommendation. And please do attempt the mock exam also. That is very important, because once you attempt a full exam, you know, there are so many students who say that we attempted the full exam for the first time and you are in the exam. So please don't be one of them. Attempt a full-fledged exam so that you are comfortable. The only surprise in the exam should be the actual questions that are coming up, not the exam pressure, the time management, the functionalities. You should be very comfortable with them in advance. And it shows in the answers that you write. Okay. Deepika has asked, I want to ask that revaluation gain on property proportioned and add with group NCI. Um, Deepika, I'm not able to understand your question completely, but from what I understand, you're saying that in terms of revaluation gain, do we add it to the group NCI? So yes, if there is any post-acquisition revaluation gain in the subsidiary company, so everything is distributed. In the subsidiary company, there are two partners. So there's parent side and then there is the NCI side. So we have to give them their share of equity in every area. That's the interesting part, right? That in consolidation questions, assets and liabilities are very easy. You just add them on a line by line basis. It's just the equity part where you have to divide the assets and the overall equity into two portions. And the equity which is related to the group goes to the group, and the equity related to NCI, it all goes in one pool, and that is NCI. For parent, we make separate tabs like consolidated revaluation reserves, group retained earnings. But for NCI, we just have one box, we have one pool, and we put everything related to NCI equity in that. Revaluation is also one of those. Amra has asked, in the financial statements, can we put the cost of sales expenses as a positive value and then deduct it when finding profit? Amra, either put a minus sign, or when you are making the format, write sales less, LESS colon cost of sales. If you write less cost of sales, then you can put in a positive figure also. But we recommend, personally, I will recommend putting a minus sign, because that will make your calculation easier. But having said that, apologies, just a sip of water. So, if you're more comfortable with putting in a positive balance, at least show the examiner that in the format sales less cost of sales, that you know that you're going to subtract it, you're just putting in the figure, that's fine. That's not an issue, as long as the further working also inputs the formula correctly. Then we have Linda. Linda has asked, can one use the study hub resources only and pass the exam, or they need to get additional study material, for example, Kaplan, BPP? Linda, I would say the more the merrier. That is something in which I will not stop you from practicing further. There is no limit of practicing. The more you do, the more comprehensively you prepare. But we are talking that even if you want to make sure that you've covered everything at least once, then the study hub past exam papers and examiner reports also comprehensively cover them. But definitely any other, not just the ones that you've mentioned, any other publications which are ACCA approved also, the more you solve them, the more exposure you will get to a variety of questions. Then Hargan has asked, thank you so much, ma'am. It's literally my fourth attempt for it, but still I feel scared regarding the upcoming attempt. So could you please give some quick tips for the last few days? Sorry, Richa, I can see you. I'm just winding up. So yes, I would say that just focus on practice. As I said, do as much practice as possible. And for the latest exam attempt, now you have the marking scheme available, you have the standard solutions also. So go through that and identify what did you struggle with. So do a self-evaluation, and based on that, do further practice. But make sure that you are covering all the areas that are there. And I will quickly go through the last ones to see if there is any tricky one. Working notes while making consolidated statement of financial position, absolutely. It's a compulsion. You have to show your workings at every point, so that even if the final figure is wrong, you get marks for the individual points. Time management, I've discussed before. 45 minutes, I recommend, although it is 1.8 minutes per mark, but my personal recommendation is 45 minutes section A, 45 minutes section B, and 1.5 hours for the section C. And there is no picking and choosing of standards in a particular section. Anything can come up from anywhere. So, Sandesh, that I cannot pick for you. And the last question is, what is the best way to present final accounts? Show the working first or accounts? No issue either way. Whatever you do, the marker is going to see both and give you marks for the workings. Okay. So with this, I've covered, I think, all the questions. Over to you, Richa.